Okay, so today we're going to talk about the 5 mistakes that buyers make when purchasing a home. So I'm Teresa McCormick with Real Brokerage LLC.
Clara Hopkins with Real Brokerage LLC as well.
Okay, so the number one thing that I think, number one mistake that buyers make, not getting a buyer's agent.
I agree.
I think everybody thinks this is just so straightforward and a trained monkey can do it until they get into it. And you'll hear people say in the middle of the transaction, I just wanted to cry. Okay, it's not supposed to be like that. Really, it's supposed to be, this is a joyful experience, your first house, your dream home. This is supposed to be this amazing thing. But if you're trying to navigate buying one of your largest assets, sometimes people are spending $500,000 or $1 million or $2 million, and they're trying to navigate by themselves. There's so much to it. Knowing state law, contract law, just knowing the nuances of real estate and just what's customary. Everybody wants a fair deal. Whether you're buyer or seller, they want a fair deal. But you don't always know that unless you do it. So I would say, let's go down a rabbit hole for a minute. Let's just talk about the NAR settlement and just what that means. When that took effect a couple of months ago, the first thing that would happen was really nothing because buyers didn't really know about it. But then all of a sudden the phone stopped ringing. And then all of a sudden people started really looking for their house by themselves and then contacting the listing agent. So I want to talk about that for a second. I've had people call me up and say, I want to represent myself. That's really hard to do here. So the big question is, who's going to write up the contract? And people will say, the listing agent can write up the contract. Okay, whose interest do they have in mind? It's really their seller. You really can't represent yourself because, let me just say why that is. In other states, it's the Wild West, you can write up something on a cocktail napkin and or get something from zip forms or just make something up. But here in Vegas, realtors really don't do that because there's limiting liabilities in the contracts that we have for the buyers, the sellers, the buyer's agents, the selling agent. So there's limited liabilities. So most brokers won't take anything but a standard GLVAR contract. They won't. So the idea of you could represent yourself, really, it's just not going to happen here. It'd be really difficult. So then people will say, I just want to go straight to the builder without representation. I'm going to say a couple of things that I think that's a problem with that. The first thing is, do you know what the costs are to purchase a home? I would say that's mistake number 2. Is that what you think?
You need land lot premiums. There's so much. I have clients that call and say, oh, there's a brand new house and it's $575,000. I said, okay, it's $575,000 start. Plus there's a lot more to that price. There's possibly a land premium.
Lot premium. Yeah.
And then there's upgrades. And they don't realize that unless you're buying a spec home, it costs money for all the upgrades add up and your price points start going up and up, and they don't anticipate that.
And there's closing costs that are different. So I don't know how many times I've had somebody say to me, they got to the signing table and they didn't realize their closing costs were going to be $30,000 or $40,000. When you're using a lender for a builder, a lot of times they're charging a loan origination fee. And they're using that to buy down your rate or to pay for some of your closing costs. But they're charging you for it. And that's number 1. Number 2, they don't pay for transfer tax in the owner's policy. A lot of times you'll hear builders say, oh, I'm going to give you 1%, or we're going to pay money towards your closing costs. Hardly ever, I would say 90-something% of the time when I'm sitting across from an agent in the field, and I'm not saying every one of them, so I don't want some hate mail from that, but I would say most of the time when I'm saying, how much are the closing costs going to be? Is there going to be a loan origination fee from the lender? How much are the total homeowner setup fees going to be? In most cases, they actually do not know because they don't sit on that side of the transaction. I literally have to research it to get the info for my clients.
And you're surprised.
Yeah, you're surprised. If you're working with an agent and they can't pull up an app on their phone and tell you how much their closing costs are going to be, asking pertinent questions, then get yourself an experienced agent. I'm sorry, I'm bashing agents, but there's so many agents out there who really don't understand on a resale or on a new build what the closing costs are. So I would say that's mistake number 2, just knowing how much it's going to cost to purchase your new home. That can be like so scary too. If you're walking into signing a contract for $1 million and really not knowing what your costs are going to be associated with that, that's almost crazy, actually. Yeah.
In the end of that.
What's your third thing? You were talking about inspections earlier.
Home inspections. We can talk about new builds a little. And I've got a few new builds going right now with some clients. You don't necessarily need a home inspection as you're moving into your new property because it's going through the city and the county.
And they go like 30 something
inspections. You can save your money there, but I do recommend, and I tell my clients over and over again, come the 10th, 11th month in your property, hire a home inspection. You want to do a home inspector? Hire one now. $400 to $500 because you're going to have your 1-year walkthrough. And the home inspector that you hired may pick up that you're going to miss on your own.
I agree.
So you have a 1-year mark with the builder. You do a final walkthrough. At this point, there are things you can't see that must be wrong. I did a new build a couple of years ago. I hired a home inspector just a couple of months before my 1-year mark. And the home inspector found about a 2-inch hole in the eaves of my home. And he goes, that's interesting. And he went into my attic and he noticed I had mice.
Holy crap.
And so I thought it was the wind, but they were mice playing in my attic. So I called the attention of the builder, the super, and they came out and cleaned it up. And I haven't had a problem since. I would never have seen that. But literally, it was that small enough to where field mice were coming in.
Yeah. And honestly, we are treading on their grounds. So they're going to come somewhere if they can get in. So it's like really smart what you're saying, though.
I think it's worth the money at that point. Not on a new build. And resales, yes, do your home inspection.
So let's talk about that for a minute. When you're trying to purchase a home, I suggest you get an inspection. There's a clause in our GLVAR contracts that say that the house is as is, whereas when you close. Okay, so highly suggest you get an inspection so you know what you're going to buy. Don't give up that contingency. So an experienced agent can help guide you through that process. There's a lot of, excuse my language, but it's a lot of cover your ass in inspection reports. And the way they word them, it's almost hard to read it. We've read, I don't know, thousands? I don't know, a lot. We've read a lot of inspection reports. So our job is to say, hey, this is a big deal. This is a health and safety issue. Even there's things, though, when I'm looking at an inspection report that aren't like necessarily big deals, but they're health and safety issues.
Sure.
And I'm going to just name a couple of them. If there's not a plate cover on your light switch, that could be called out by an appraiser. If there's some exposed wire, they're not capped off. If there's a broken window, if the garage door is not functioning properly, and if there are missing batteries and a smoke detector. These are small things, but they could hold up your transaction, meaning the appraiser will call them out and the lender won't do a loan on the property. So it's to do an inspection and to have an experienced agent with you just going through the report and saying, okay, these are big deals. These are health and safety issues. They're smaller deals, but we need to get them handled before we have that appraiser come in. Because otherwise, if you don't, you'll be paying for a reinspection from the appraiser, which could be like $150 or something, but depending on the appraiser, but it's $150. I would say get in a home inspection. That's like during COVID, people were waiving inspections and waiving appraisals and all of that. We're not in that kind of market right now. I would say get an inspection no matter what. What's the next thing that you were saying was a big mistake?
I'd like to, when I'm introduced to someone, they're looking for a property and they're like, I'm not looking to buy for 6 to 12 months. I say, you know what? Let's get you going right now.
Yeah.
I love not rushing this process. Having clients study the market, follow see what's coming up. It's never too to start your property search. Don't wait to the last minute.
I agree with that. Okay, I believe in studying the market. Here's the other thing that people don't realize. We've been doing this a lot of years, and we know where all the landmines are. So when you're getting to know your client, our job is really to advise. We're not supposed to be, even though we use that word a lot, salespeople, we use that vernacular, but what our job is to do is not to sell a house, is to facilitate it and to advise. Clara does a really good job of this, of just getting to know her client, getting to know what their needs are so that she can advise them properly. I was listing a house, and I had these buyers were put an offer in on it. And this lady she had filled in her pool. She had a solar that she still owed some money on. I think that they got a water filtration system that they'd actually leased for zero interest or something, or really small interest or whatever. So we had to deal with that. She had an alarm system. She had two or three HOAs. So every day we were calling her saying, we need this for the buyer and this document for title to facilitate the transaction and to limit the seller's liability. So it's like, there's just a lot more to it than to try to do it alone. So I'm going to tell you a stat. It was saying that 87% of buyers get a buyer's agent, but those who don't end up paying with this stat here, 2 to 3% more. So if you're going to have to end up paying 2 to 3% more anyway, get yourself a buyer's agent.
Yeah. No.
When you're out, are you having trouble getting the sellers to pay for your commission?
The sellers are paying. I've not had buyers yet come out of pocket to date.
I haven't either.
And this started, the BBRA came in place August 18th, 2024. So I've yet to have a buyer pay.
Right.
No,
and okay, and I list more, but I do show some buyers here and there, but I haven't had any trouble. Not one. We have had one of my sellers who didn't want to pay the buyer's agent's commission. He rejected that in the offer, and they walked.
Right.
Sure. Okay. First, there wasn't any negotiating on it. People were putting offers in for 3%, and they were getting 3%. Now it seems like there's a little bit of negotiating on it, but I haven't had any of my sellers. Even that guy ended up on the next offer that he got because they walked. I guess it was a spanking or something.
Well, my clients, they've also said that if they're not offering to pay your commission, we don't want to look at the property.
Yeah.
But knock on wood, I haven't had an issue yet.
Everybody keeps thinking that the reason for the NAR settlement was because sellers shouldn't have to pay the buyer's agent's commission. I've been doing this 19 years. Long ago, our contracts would stipulate what the exact percent the listing agent and the buyer's agent would receive from the seller's proceeds. Somewhere along the way, though, that second line about how much the buyer's agent was to receive disappeared. So it was a verbal thing. It ended up being a verbal thing because that line wasn't there anymore. After the NAR settlement, the only commission that is stipulated up front is the listing agent. What the seller pays to the buyer's agent is up to the seller. But there is a new place on our contracts where a buyer can ask for the buyer's agent's commission. This is about transparency and sellers knowing what they are paying for and how much. And according to a new study, 2.35 was the typical commission for a buyer's agent. Now it's 2.34. So there hasn't been a lot of change in that. Buyers that are leery to get a buyer's agent to get some kind of representation, I don't think there's any need to be leery. I think commissions can be negotiated out.
Sure. Having an agent on your side, it's just saving you time in the long run.
Yeah, time and money.
Absolutely. Most of my clients are out of state, so they don't know upcoming areas. I've got a couple right now, and I'm talking about what's happening in the Northwest, up past Scott Canyon, near Kyle Canyon. They're like, we've never heard of that. And I said, educating them on that. But there's a lot out-of-state buyers don't know what's happening in Vegas. Get a licensed professional that knows the area, that knows the school districts, that knows about the parks and the hiking, and get to know your clients and have them in an area that suits them best as a family or an individual.
I agree. Okay, so if you're coming from somewhere else, I'm just going to branch off on what you said. It's not only that you don't know what neighborhoods and what those neighborhoods offer, but it's more than that. After you close escrow, if you're from somewhere else, I would say that 9 times out of 10, you're going to need something. You're going to need some flooring guy. You're going to need to have somebody in your corner that says, hey, listen, this client of mine said, I need a roofer. I'm like, I got you. Oh, and I need some plants replaced in my front yard. I'm like, got you.
You've got good resources.
Yeah, you like,
Sure.
Yeah, you don't leave your client after we close escrow. You've got somebody in your corner forever, because honestly, you want to keep them as a lifetime client for the whole time that you're in real estate. And I've got years to go. So what was the other thing that we were going to talk about?
We can talk about, which I think is real important, the whole pre-approval process.
Oh, that's so big.
It's huge. Pre-approvals usually go for 6 months. So if I'm working with a client near a year out, I said, okay, let's study the market. Let's ballpark what you want to spend on it. And in that time frame, you recommend local lenders. You get them pre-approved, and then you start narrowing down their search. But what I tell them, first of all, before your pre-approval process, how's your credit looking? Do you need to pay down some loans, some credit cards? What's happening? And then you set them up with the local lender. And you work with them. Maybe you need to bring down your debt to income ratio. Maybe you don't. So during the pre-approval process, which is made off your current income, what's in your account, your status, your marital status,
Your tax returns.
don't jack with it too much. Don't start buying new cars while you're looking for
Yeah.
Don't
yeah.
open up new ones. Don't open. We've all had stories. I had a client that was so close to closing on a property, and he went out and bought a $110,000 pickup truck. Blew his loan. Couldn't do it. And I was like, I told you, you can do that. Just wait till after the close of escrow. Wait till you're recorded with the city. Then spend all the money you want. But during that time period, watch your spending. Watch the money coming into your accounts and going out of your accounts. Do you have gift funds from a family member that wants to help you out? That's fine, but we need to trace all that.
What you just said is like being strategic and making a plan
Oh, yeah.
to purchase a house,
Sure.
because it's a big purchase.
You have to tighten the belt.
Yeah. So just talking, like a frank conversations. Don't be embarrassed about how little you have. Honestly, we're not trying to pry into anybody's business, but you want to say, if you've got this little issue over here, let's address it. Let's bring the elephants out and let's walk them around the room. And then let's see if we can overcome that problem, that hurdle. And then once we do that, then let's do this, then let's do this, then let's do this. Yeah, it is. It's a process, and it should be.
And a good lender will help guide you the way as well.
And I think there's less shock. If you go in and you're saying, okay, this is really what payment that I want to have, then you can work backwards. You can reverse engineer it. You can look at those houses that, fit within that budget.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
So I want to talk about when you actually get in the transaction. I think people get all emotional about the transaction. This is my perfect house. This is everything that I need to have a perfect life. And then they get in with all of that fear and emotion, and sometimes deals are going awry for $200. I would say that my big thing when I'm talking about a transaction is to be prepared to negotiate past the initial offer. Like you put your offer in, you do your inspection, you do negotiate the repairs. You may also have to negotiate the appraisal as well as timeline changes. Be prepared that things aren't going to go exactly to plan. You try. But if you're going in with more of a strategy, if this happens, then I'll do this. If this happens, then I'll do that. If you go in like that and not everything ride or die, I think it's a smoother transaction for everybody.
I agree.
Yeah.
And you have to be a little flexible. You have to trust your real estate agent. You also have to stay on top of dates and you're right. Things happen along the way, and 99.9% of the time it turns out in the end.
Yeah, it does. Is there anything that you want to add before we close it up? No, go ahead.
This little thing, And it's happening right now during a transaction where my clients are getting a lot of advice
I know we went to
from
talk about
Uncle
that.
Bob and from a neighbor back in Nebraska. And Uncle Bob's great. He bought a house about 48 years ago, and he's giving a lot of advice now, but a lot of it doesn't pertain to today's transactions. Transactions have changed over the years.
Yeah.
And it's just not like it was when you bought a house in the 60s. Things are different. A lot more documentation.
A lot more documentation.
A lot more due diligence. So once again, I had a client and they said, we'd like to use our own appraiser. And I said,
You can't do that anymore.
it has to be a non-biased person and you have to go with what the lender has. So
Lenders have a pool of appraisers that they use. Back prior to the crash, you would pick your own appraiser. So you would say, hey, listen, I tell you what, I'm going to give you $750 instead of your fee of $500. And I'd like the appraisal to come in at this. And so you can't do that.
No.
You're really not even supposed to have direct contact with them.
Mhm.
So you can offer comps to an appraiser as a suggestion.
upgrade sheet.
Yeah, upgrade sheet. But really, there should be a line that you don't cross over. So you're right. And I'm going to just add something about that. We use trusted advisors. There's inspectors that we use that we trust. There's lenders that we use that we trust because they're battle worn. They've been in the battles with us, in the trenches with us, and gotten us to the finish line. And title companies, absolutely. Just like having a bad title company can wreck a deal. It really can. I've had them before where the participants in the transaction were complaining. And again, it's not supposed to be that way. It's supposed to be a joyful experience. So I would say that's anything you want to add on experienced professionals? Listen to your experienced realtor. Listen to your experienced inspector and your experienced lender.
It's the biggest purchase you'll make in life. And you have to trust the professionals that your real estate agent is going to provide for you.
Yeah, there you go.
Absolutely.
Okay, let's wrap
Awesome.
this up. All right.
All
All right, thanks.
Okay.